My wife recently confessed to cheating on me for 4 years out of boredom and wants me back after a brief separation. Trying to make sense of my current predicament and would appreciate any advice you can give. In addition to our 3 kids, who were born on 15/13/11, my wife, 39F, and I, 40M, have been married for 17 years. We've been together for about 23 years. We were sweethearts in high school. Here are the limited facts I possess. However, my knowledge is rather limited. Wife returned from work 3 days ago. She had to go back to work on the 4th. She was agitated and furious. She hurriedly packed an overnight bag and departed. We only know this because our eldest daughter was home and observed her. She attempted to comfort her, but all she did was cry and remain silent. Asked whether she was on the verge of panic. Nobody has gotten a response from her to our texts or phone calls. My wife's parents reassured me that she is safe with them when I contacted them immediately. They asked that I be kind and patient. It's done. I reached out to one of her close colleagues, her brother, and her sister. According to her brother, he had no idea, and her coworker reported that 3 days earlier, she was at work in the morning and had left by lunch. It's done. Even with the kids, I haven't heard from my wife in 3 days. As I attempt to juggle her absence with my 3 daughters, no one is providing any information. The kids are inquiring about mommy and what happened, and all I can tell them is that she's visiting grandma and grandpa. It is expected that we exercise patience and understanding. It is so unbearable to be stuck here in limbo that I have an overwhelming impulse to just grab the kids and go there without completely null. The distance is only 3 hours. The kids assume we're getting a divorce because of our big argument, but that's just not true. The kids are aware that we never argue. Could someone provide some light on this from a logical standpoint? I'm completely confused. Because I'm trying to get things under control without her, my present emotional condition is making me think in circles. The first people you would notify if someone died would most likely be your spouse and/or relatives. Perhaps some repressed pain from the past was resurrected. Again, my wife would be the first person I would turn to for assistance if I were in that situation. We have no idea. I am at a loss as to what to do. Everything is confusing. We are all in the dark, and nobody is letting the girls or myself know anything, so we're just sitting here in limbo. Furthermore, it has evoked in me every possible feeling imaginable. Worry, fear, anger, etc. Is anyone capable of proposing a rational idea? For what reason would you choose to behave in such a way toward your family? Apologies for the first update. I'm still learning the ropes of Reddit. Not much to say. I can't figure out how to attach my previous post. Regrettably, I am not quite certain of the approach to take. Last night was so exhausting that I slept through much of it. Thank you for reading all of the posts yesterday and into the night. I apologize for the brief update, but I do not plan to spend much time online today. However, I will read the replies as they become available. I will just state my knowledge and end it there. Following the advice of many of you, I contacted the police when my father-in-law failed to contact me last night. The officers then conducted a wellness check. My wife's infidelity started a chain reaction of problems that I won't go into here. Probably longer than 2 years. All of them were right. Tuesday night was the end of the other man's life, as he presumably suffered a heart attack. It seems likely that my sister-in-law and mother-in-law have been aware of it and have been acting as her go-betweens. Neither the daughters nor I have had any communication from my wife. For the time being, I'm trying to keep this a secret from them since I really don't know what to do. To be honest, I'm pretty much at a loss for words at this point. Your assistance and guidance are much appreciated. Okay. I'm still confused about what to do next, but that's it. Pray for my family and me if you are a believer. Update 2. I recently joined this sub after hearing good things about it from others. In my spare time, I've been going through a lot of postings. Late at night, when the day's turmoil dies down, my mind takes control, and I have depressive episodes, followed by angry outbursts, or sometimes both emotions at once. I feel like a zombie because I can't sleep, and then I aimlessly go about my day. I suppose Friday was D-Day for me as I attempted to memorize all the acronyms. It is quite probable that the wife's affair, which I previously believed to have lasted 2 years, was actually much longer, and the man with whom she had an affair was someone she had known for some time. The disclosure was set in motion by his untimely death from a heart attack. With the aid of my eldest daughter, I'm still researching a lot of topics that aren't yet ready for public consumption. Posting about my issue has been almost therapeutic because so many people have provided so much aid and advice. I really didn't intend to keep doing it. The knowledge that a great number of other people have experienced or are experiencing similar agony is painful. My deepest apologies for that. Yesterday and today, I met with 2 attorneys to explore my choices. I also reached out to other organizations for treatment, but unfortunately, there are extremely long wait times where I reside. Doing my best to follow the advice of others, taking care of myself, exercising, not drinking, though I never have, etc. For someone my age, I'm in pretty decent shape, but I just don't have the motivation to hit the gym at the moment. Please realize that I am just not prepared to answer your questions about the who, what, when, and why just now. Even though I know many of you will want answers. Seems like a new bomb goes off every day. All I need is some guidance on one item so I can get some sleep. Being the mother of my 3 lovely girls and my best friend since high school, my wife meant the world to me. You know, all of our inside jokes and secret handshakes have vanished. Everything has simply vanished. Now I simply get really down when I remember all the years we spent together, every achievement, and every joke. Disabling. Really. She acts as if it were all for naught, and I fear for her future. Then the how could we questions start popping into my head, and I lose control of my inconsolable wrath. A terrible cycle ensues in which I scream into my pillow and then hit the mattress until my arms ache. I occasionally nod off due to sheer weariness, but then I'll be startled awake, and the mental arithmetic starts all over again. My daughters, who have been attempting to care for me as if they were my parents, get all of my remaining energy. Their situation is unfair. After learning of the affair, how did everyone manage to get any rest? When you were alone with your thoughts during the night, how did you handle the quiet? I'm hoping you can assist me since, apart from my girls, I've determined that getting enough sleep should be my top priority right now. Much obliged. Third update. I'm sorry for the repetition. I'm still learning the ropes of Reddit and am unsure of how much of my predicament is required of me. However, I didn't find out about my wife's infidelity for nearly 4 years until my D-Day, which was a little over a week ago. To this day, there is no definitive schedule. It probably began on an emotional level and progressed to a physical one. Also, I'm wondering, and I might or might not find out, how the epidemic and lockdowns factored into this. WW has been crash camping at my in-laws' place since this nightmare started, so yesterday they paid an unannounced visit to see their grandkids. Which is, of course, totally ridiculous because they greeted my 3 children, my wife and I, for no more than 15 minutes before requesting to talk privately with me. I won't go into detail about the lengthy talk here because, well, you know how such things go. To make a long tale short, my wife is terrified of the consequences of her actions and wants to return home, but she can't bring herself to face the truth. Her parents also delved deep to find out whether I intended to file for a divorce. And they invested a lot of energy into persuading me to forgive my wife and work on our marriage. They obviously wanted my wife out of their house and were mortified and humiliated by what happened. The conversation was full of civility and respect. Even though I want to file for a divorce, I lied and said I wasn't sure about my future intentions. However, if I tell my wife the truth, I fear she would never tell me the truth. Even if I'll never understand, I'd prefer it if she could just sit down and explain it to me. We have been married for 17 years and have been together since high school. We have 3 children and numerous memories. I long for the day when she will meet my gaze and spill the beans. Additionally, I would like my children to understand that I allowed I am uncertain opportunity to clarify her position, express her remorse, and work through the situation as an adult team. I can't seem to make up my mind which choice will be the most exemplary for my children. Perhaps I'm mishandling it. My lawyer made it quite clear that I cannot legally forbid my wife from entering our house. Therefore, I will not be able to prevent my wife from returning home. Having said that, I really do not desire this at the moment. Since my children and I have begun to establish a pleasant routine, I made a demand that I thought would be difficult to fulfill for some time. I told my wife she could come home if she faced me directly, looked me in the eyes, and told me the whole truth about her affair. No holding back or trying to hide anything. Before sitting down with the girls to apologize and answer their questions. Reasoned because they are already aware that it is just. She is under no legal obligation to return home at any time or comply with any requests, but if she is too scared to confront us, maybe we may take advantage of her fear? Am I mistaken? I'm not attempting to be sneaky or misleading. I simply would like to put off starting to live with someone until later. In any case, our state requires a 90-day waiting period before a divorce may be finalized. I prefer to make it last so I have time to prepare and improve my mental and emotional health, but in the end, her return is unavoidable, and so is our return to work and life in general. My wife has been communicating with the girls by text, claiming that she is against a divorce and constantly apologizing. The kids have shown me the texts and ask me how I am doing every day. The realization of her actions against us is weighing heavily on her, particularly in the past few days. With what tools can I handle this? Were my demands naive? My wife is apparently planning to return home really soon. At this point in time, I am certain of my next steps. I am not scared by this since I anticipated its inevitable occurrence. Rather, I am concerned only with doing what is best for my girls and myself. Your words of encouragement, wise counsel, and unwavering support have been much appreciated. Update 4. I apologize for the length, but I really need to get everything out because my weekend was bad. I know this will be rather anticlimactic. My wife, though, returned home yesterday. Quite a bit of suspense built up to it throughout the course of this week. There was an awfully uncomfortable stiffness between us, unlike the other times when she had first entered the threshold, when I would have embraced and kissed her. Before she spoke a word, she walked up to me and attempted to hug me, but I resisted. Fake, as if the whole incident hadn't transpired. She kept saying she wasn't ready, but as she calmed down, I naturally wanted to know everything. The outcome was the same as when we spoke on the phone earlier in the week. I was adamant that she could only return home if she loved her family deeply enough to explain her 3-week absence. However, she kept saying she wasn't prepared for that. I took a few deep breaths and attempted to collect myself so that I could resist the need to yell at her. After what seemed like an eternity of silence, I finally said it. She had been seeing a coworker for 4 years, was planning to leave me for this other man, had ghosted her entire family, and was now walking out the door without fulfilling my one request. I also wanted a divorce. Seems like things started to go strange around here. It was clear from her facial expressions and body language that she was unaware of my knowledge of her affair. She sent me an empathetic look before remaining motionless in the kitchen, her expressionless face betraying her shock. This is not what I was anticipating at all. Perhaps a dramatic outburst, a confession through tears, a scream accusing me of being involved in the affair, or a level-headed, "Okay, let's talk it out," but definitely not this. We must have stood in the kitchen silently for at least 5 minutes. It was the most bizarre thing I've ever encountered. It was obvious that neither she nor I had any idea what to say. Every one of your comments/advice regarding my case had been viewed by me. I had planned for every conceivable outcome of this conversation down to the last detail, even taking notes and practicing in front of a mirror. Nope, not this one. In light of all I knew about her affair, I made the decision to document it immediately. Perhaps I was foolish. Continued to fill her in on all I knew, including my ideas about how she met AP, her sister's role, COVID, events, etc. Without moving an eye. She remained fixed on the floor. She said nothing, and my anger grew. Nevertheless, I refrained from being rude or raising my voice. After I gathered my thoughts, there was another uncomfortable pause. As soon as I realized everything, my fury turned to despair. Softly, I inquired as to what I had done to make her go. Could she ever have loved me? Was AP worth it, anyway? She said nothing, made no movement, and remained still. She has completely disappeared. She remained silent, lowered her head, and offered no explanation, apologies, or tears. Nothing. My God, this stung more than D-Day. Things took a turn for the worse, and I remained frozen in place, staring at her. Naturally, our girls were listening in on the whole conversation. I just can't believe how foolish I am. For the last few weeks, I've been putting their needs above my own, but after confronting my wife, I became upset and completely forgot about them. Thus, our eldest daughter, who had a great deal of pent-up rage, went ballistic and exploded downstairs. My wife bolted upstairs and slammed the door behind her. Right now, that's the situation. Until I finally slept off last night, I listened to my wife sob uncontrollably. We have all avoided her, with the exception of our youngest, who has attempted to approach her. Even though this is still her house, I'm going to advise that she remain with her sister until we can finalize the divorce. It's going to be so bad if we all have to live with her. I'm trying to get the confidence to say this. I was mistaken about my wife, and you were all right. I was also mistaken about our years spent together, the memories we made, and the moments that changed our lives. She knelt down and pleaded with me to forgive her. I really thought she would finally have her comeuppance after all these years and spill the beans to clear her name. Once, this woman returned to a farmer's market in her car after realizing she had received $10 more in change than she needed, yet she still didn't value us. Perhaps I was never valuable to her to begin with. What should I do next? The daughters and I attempted to keep on as we had for the previous 2 weeks despite the unbearable discomfort we were experiencing at home today. I just want it to end already, with the divorce and all the unpleasant talks and fights and drama that will inevitably follow. How did you handle living with your WS, for those of you who have had to do that? Particularly when it comes to children? This is only the first step, I'm sure. Even though I've read several blogs promising things would improve, I still feel like I'm a long way off. At this very moment, there is absolutely no situation in which I would not want to cry or shout. Keeping my composure for the sake of the girls is my first priority, but I'm not sure I can manage it for 3 months straight. Not to mention that the start of the school year is imminent. I don't know if the worst is behind us or ahead, but I appreciate any and all support you can provide me as I go through this next era of my life. I suppose this is all now. Thank you, everyone. Fifthly, I'm not doing well, and I haven't been doing well since my wife returned home and I found out about her affair. I've been doing my best to put up a brave front for the sake of my girls. I make an effort to speak and think correctly, but the reality must be admitted tonight. I know it comes in waves, like many of you who write every day, but I had a major one tonight and almost lost it. I am attempting to be as patient and careful as possible since I am beginning to hope for an uncontested divorce that we basically manage ourselves. However, after tonight, I will no longer know if my WW has hired a lawyer or not. WW works fairly close to our family home, but her sister is an hour away if there's no traffic. We've been living together throughout the week, and on Friday evenings she goes to see her. On Sunday nights, she comes home. My oldest daughter and my wife haven't spoken since a couple of traumatic incidents, but other than that, my girls and I have been attempting to go about our daily lives as usual while my wife has largely avoided us. Despite this, we do have casual encounters every night. I think it's a good thing right now. Thanks to all you've said and everything I've read, I've been trying really hard to be self-controlled with my wife recently. It's been challenging, but I've been doing my best to be distant and uncaring when we have brief conversations, but I'm always nice and respectful. Good night. She has been getting a few things ready to go on a weekend getaway with her sister before I get home from work on the last 2 or 3 Fridays. No, not this evening. Upon my return home this evening, I found her patiently waiting for me in the kitchen. I attempted to simply walk past, but she gently took hold of my hand and asked if this was how I would treat her. Apparently, she isn't ready to talk to me about her affair, which is incredibly surprising because it's been nearly a month since this whole thing came to light. The fact that our girls weren't home at the time made me angry. And I unleashed all of my vices, pains, aches, fury, and suffering instead of simply biting my tongue and walking away. She was the recipient of my unloading. I completely lost track of time and can't even begin to describe how long I continued. When I finally broke down and told her how devastated I am and how much pain I endure daily, I did become a bit heated and loud. All the things that have been bothering me and that I have been suppressing. Recounting all I said would make this post 4,000 words long. I was determined to finish what I started. Obviously, I broke down and sobbed again. I was furious with myself since I had been performing admirably up until that point. I hate it. I gave in and let her approach me. I had a feeling it was going to happen. Embarrassing. It has been simmering for some time, and I can only release so much at the gym. For the first time ever, WW also became visibly tearful. Surprisingly, he started weeping uncontrollably. Unfortunately, it brought me joy to witness her pain, just as it did for me. I wish I didn't care, but it was satisfying to watch her finally cry. As if there were a single soul there who possessed even a shred of empathy. I left the kitchen before she could gather herself enough to say anything further, urged her to please leave me alone, and it was astonishing that she whispered apologies many times throughout my eruption. She looked awful sobbing, and all she could say was that she was sorry. There you have it. She hung out in the kitchen for a little before heading back to her sister's. When the girls returned home half an hour later, they could tell something had happened. It was impossible to disguise it. But I still wasn't prepared to talk about it, and I still don't think they should know. I don't want to impede the growth of my two youngest children, and I also don't want to give my eldest daughter more ammunition, so I'm keeping this information to myself. I despise this to bits. I ought to have kept it together. I ought to have simply ignored my WW and continued on my way. I don't know. Looking back, it seems like she was attempting to bring up her affair but wasn't sure how to begin the topic. Nonetheless, she didn't get to go very far before I lost it. I know a lot of you may find this disturbing, but I truly do not want her to be in danger, and it has begun to trouble me. Since practically everyone has ignored her, she has been all by herself with her thoughts. Yeah, she's deserved it, but she's still a human being and my kid's mom. What a disappointment. I'm so disappointed in myself. Apologies for going on yet another lengthy tirade. I even resorted to ranting to my brother. Wow. I'll give it another go on Monday. I'm just a human, and while it felt nice to lash out at her, the guilt is setting in now. Would you prefer that I text my wife or just ignore her? Thank you for listening, for giving me the support I need to get through this, and for all the advice you gave me despite the craziness. I'm a complete mess. Our group has begun treatment, which is a step in the right direction, but wow, this is tough. I am grateful for the concern shown by the many of you who have contacted me. Update 6. I haven't had the opportunity to get online whatsoever, and most of you are right. Things aren't great. I went into this week intending to take a vacation from the internet, but I'm backpedaling like crazy. It has simply been terrible. My wife has been really lovely and constantly apologetic for her affair. She cries and then smothers me, and she keeps coming to my door at night, asking to chat, so I haven't had much alone time this week. While I did speak to her when I was feeling particularly chatty, I have also ignored her on occasion. It happened last night after I finally snapped at her on Wednesday night, ordering her to stop bothering me. After the daughters went to bed, my soon-to-be ex-wife came into my room and begged to speak with me in private. It's been just over a month since she returned home after her affair blew up, and now things have entered this awkward cohabitating pattern. Unlike how she had been interacting with me during the week. I resisted at first, but in the end I sat in my car in the garage so we wouldn't have to have the same embarrassing confrontation in front of the kids. My apologies for the length. Everything, she said, was true in her opinion. For over 3 hours, we remained outside. Tell me more. I'm not sure. I stayed up all night because I couldn't sleep and listened to her cry over and over again. In the past, I've also sobbed, become quite furious, and resisted the need to yell at her, cried again, and so on. Please be patient if I don't reply for a day or two. I just need to get this out of my system before I attempt to get some sleep. My WW has been apologizing and asking for another chance with me throughout the evening, which hasn't helped matters. It hurts so much to be in her company that I had to leave for a little break. In any case, her sister introduced her to her AP around 5 years before COVID. Clearly not with any romantic feelings in mind, but he was a higher up at the firm she was interested in working for and is still employed by, so he let her in. She had other motivations before she had an affair, but once she did, it was clear that she wanted to switch careers. There was an influx of sexual advances from AP when she was hired. It all began with messaging, then moved on to photos and more texting, and then got physical right before the COVID pandemic hit. After being honest with her sister, she wanted to tell me the truth, but she ultimately chose to keep quiet and bury the secret. The wife mentioned that she went NC with her AP shortly after, but when the limits and lockdowns were relaxed, he reached out to her again, and they resumed conversing. However, after businesses resumed, the physical element of their affair resumed. Claiming to have broken up the romance twice due to remorse, she continued to return to him. Thus, in essence, it was never over. She went into great detail, reading out each step of the process while answering questions. She even had a 5-page packet of handwritten notes detailing her affair timeline. When she was traveling for work, she lied about weekend vacations with the daughters, traffic, her parents, shopping trips, and many other things. Indeed, the list was lengthy, and my suspicions were confirmed. She told me so many falsehoods that I believed her without questioning her since I wanted to be with him. I felt much worse after hearing everything. Everyone was right. However, unlike what I've heard on many occasions, her love for me remained unwavering during this ordeal. I didn't see any major changes in intimacy that would cause me to be concerned. And yet, she does confess to having feelings for AP and fantasizing about a future with him. Despite being older, divorced, and unmarried, he assured her of lavish gifts, exotic holidays, and anything else she could desire. She began to fantasize about running away from her family duties, claiming that the excitement of being with him was too great to resist, and she began to vent about how bored she was with the monotony of family life. She seemed to be very honest, quite emotional, and remarkably forthright. Midway through, I lost it and started weeping. It stung to hear it all, as you could think. After she finished confessing, she assured me that her love for me had never wavered and that she would do anything, or everything, to keep the marriage together. This was something that many of you had anticipated. However, I couldn't help but feel that something was off. Everything appeared staged. I've known when this woman is being dishonest for more than half my life. It probably makes little difference if I'm incorrect. Although I managed to keep my cool this time around, I still lost my temper and said some hurtful things, including a barb about her AP's infidelity and how he was about to dump her for another woman. She looked to be really distressed by that. Countless thoughts have raced through my mind as I contemplate this pivotal moment when she would ultimately admit. Think of all the one-liners I could hurl at her or hurtful things I might say in response. I couldn't think of a single answer at the emotional time last night, but if AP were still alive and faced with a choice between me and him, who would she choose? That's the one question I would ask. A murmured "that's not fair" came out of her after some indecision. After I kept pushing the topic, she finally said that she would definitely choose me. In my defense, I said that she was lying again, and her reluctance was the main reason I was getting a divorce. The last thing she said was that she began to cry. We drove around for a time, and she just wouldn't stop crying. I was exhausted, so I finally broke the news that we're getting a divorce and that we have a responsibility to the kids to be respectful of each other, be good parents, and be involved in their lives. The final thing I told her was plagiarized from another internet source, but I did add that after everything she had done to me, I hoped she was a decent enough person to divorce fairly/amicably, because that would show she loved me. I want you to know that I am not a small-minded person and that I did not want to hurt her. It seemed like the right way to wrap things up, but I truly meant every word and deed. After telling her I would have loved her forever and planting a kiss on her forehead, I climbed out of the car and headed to bed. That settled it. I slept poorly last night, and now I'm having trouble sleeping again this evening. At this point, I am utterly confused. I haven't consulted with my attorney yet, but I suppose that's a positive thing because her chance to challenge the divorce has passed. Once again, I find myself inconsolable and reverting to my depressed, angry self. It was tough to hear everything last night, but now that I know, it was unnecessary. Who knows whether she lied and made it all up as well, but it fit with everything I had gathered in the previous month. And with that, I will conclude for the time being. This seems to go on forever. A few good days pass, and I begin to feel strong again, but then something else occurs. It seems like months, yet it's just been days all at once. However, I want to attempt to get some sleep. Just picture it. The one lady you've ever loved, the one who means everything to you, kissed. Accuses boredom as the reason she cheated on you for more than 4 years. No such things as falling out of love, growing apart, relationship problems, or a lifeless bedroom occurred. It was purely out of boredom. Uncertain as to whether that exacerbates the problem or not. Thank you for taking the time to read and provide assistance. I've had a rough couple of nights.